still living in that small apartment. My uncle chuckled. My sister mocked, must be hard. Then Mom spotted the key in my palm. Wait, is that a Lamborghini fob? I smiled, oh this? Just a simple housewarming gift for myself. I loved my family, but they had a way of cutting me down. What I didn't know was how far they'd go to keep me small, until I found my own name forged on a document, and that's when everything changed. I drove a beat-up old sedan, the kind that wheezed past 60, and honestly, every time I parked it outside my tiny apartment in Chicago, I felt a familiar ache. Not for the car, but for the constant feeling that I was never quite enough for the people who mattered most. It was always like that. I was the quiet one in our loud family, always preferring books to parties, internships to vacations, simple routines over chaos. My sister, Chloe, 2 years older, she was the family star. Always dressed to the nines, always with someone rich or important. She somehow got a business degree from an expensive school my parents helped fund, even though she barely passed. But Chloe knew how to play the part. Fake it till you make it, right? And my parents, especially Mom, absolutely adored her for it. Then there was my Uncle Mark, Mom's younger brother. He was the kind of guy who'd brag about crypto before it was cool and tell the same 3 stories every Thanksgiving. He made his money flipping real estate, or so he said, though nobody ever quite knew how he kept affording new Rolexes. He had that booming, sarcastic voice that made you feel like he was always mocking you, even when he was joking. So yeah, family gatherings? Not exactly a confidence booster for me. But I still showed up. Maybe, deep down, hoped one day they'd see me differently. Maybe they'd respect that I'd built something for myself on my own, without cutting corners. I'd been in tech for years. I started as a junior back-end developer, grinding through late nights, working unpaid overtime, just trying to prove I belonged. Everyone else seemed to have Ivy League diplomas and startup equity, but I found my groove. 2 years ago, I gambled. I joined a stealth startup with barely any funding. Lived off ramen, dollar coffee, shared a shoebox apartment with peeling paint and a broken radiator. It was a risk, but it paid off. Last November, the company got acquired for a jaw-dropping sum. And thanks to the shares I held? Quietly, humbly, I became a millionaire overnight. But I didn't rush to show it. I stayed in that same apartment, still drove my old car. I kept my head down, reinvested most of it, bought a few things here and there. I wanted to be smart, strategic, not flashy. That's just how I operate. But still, something deep inside me wanted closure. I'd spent years being underestimated, even mocked, by my own family. And the truth is, no matter how far you come, part of you still craves validation from the people who raised you, who somehow always made you feel like you weren't quite enough. So, when Mom texted me about the upcoming family brunch at Uncle Mark's new house, a 3-story glass monstrosity in the outskirts of Phoenix, part of me groaned. But another part whispered, "This is your chance." Her text was an order, not a request. Sunday, 11 a.m. sharp. Everyone's coming. Wear something nice. I almost didn't reply. But after a minute, I sent back, "Sure, I'll be there." I hadn't seen any of them in over a year. Not since Christmas, when Chloe casually asked if I was still coding in my pajamas all day, while flicking imaginary caviar off her fingernails. That night, Dad pulled me aside, asking if I'd thought about real estate school. You know, he'd said, a backup plan, just in case the tech thing doesn't pan out. I remembered laughing bitterly, not even bothering to explain I was leading a product team. So, yeah, I had a few old memories to burn through. That Sunday, I arrived early. I pulled up quietly to Uncle Mark's circular driveway in my new car, a matte black Lamborghini Huracan Technica, the kind that growls even when idling. I'd only picked it up the day before, a splurge I'd agonized over for weeks. But sitting there, keys in hand, I realized I wasn't buying it for speed. I was buying it for me. For every time I'd been laughed at, dismissed, or belittled. As I stepped out, the afternoon sun glinting off its sleek curves, I saw them all gathered by the backyard patio. Uncle Mark's booming voice carried first, "Chloe, come here and see this indoor sauna. I just had it shipped from Finland." Then Mom's shrill laughter, followed by the unmistakable clinking of mimosas. I walked through the side gate, key fob still in hand. They all turned toward me. Uncle Mark, holding a tumbler of scotch, raised an eyebrow. Still living in that tiny apartment, Ethan, he chuckled. Chloe, lounging in some designer floral dress, crossed her legs dramatically, sneering, must be tough. I just smiled a little, didn't say a word. Then Mom, mid-sip, squinted. Her eyes dropped to my hand. Wait, she said slowly, the color draining from her face. Is that a Lamborghini fob? I held it up slightly, like I'd forgotten it was even there. Oh, this. I tilted my head. Just a little housewarming gift to myself. You could have heard a fork drop. Their reactions were priceless. I didn't rub it in, not yet. But the look in their eyes shifted, just for a second. From amusement to confusion to something else. Maybe doubt, maybe fear. It was the first time in my life I felt like I truly had the upper hand. And I wasn't done. What none of them knew, what they had no idea about, was that the car was just the beginning. I had other plans. Quiet ones. Smart ones. They were about to learn that the person they'd spent years mocking was someone they should never have underestimated. But for now, I just smiled, walking toward the patio, key still in hand, as the silence stretched like a rubber band, waiting to snap. And oh, it would. Just not yet. That silence lasted just a second, long enough for the embarrassment to settle, but they recovered fast. My family had always been experts at twisting the narrative, like reality was just a dress they could tailor. Uncle Mark clapped his hands once, sharply, shaking off the moment. Well, well, he said, voice a little too loud. Look at you, big shot. Midlife crisis already? Thought that came at 40, not 28. Chloe snorted. That's not a housewarming gift. That's a cry for help, she said, sipping her mimosa. Bet your rent's gonna triple now that the neighbors think you're some kind of influencer. I didn't bite. I just smiled, taking the empty seat at the far end of the table. I wasn't about to let them drag me back into the old dynamics. Not this time. But they kept going. Mom leaned in from across the table, her voice doing that sweet butt clause underneath. Thing. Honey, she said, that car must have cost. Well, I don't want to know. But don't you think it's a little much? Especially when you're still living in that old apartment with the cracked windows. Dad, beside her, grunted. Should have put that money into property. Something stable. A house, maybe. Remember that duplex Chloe showed us? That was a smart deal. I bit the inside of my cheek. I remembered that duplex. I also remembered how I'd offered to help Chloe with her taxes last year, and she'd told me to leave the money stuff to the adults. Chloe turned to me. Actually, I've been meaning to ask. Do you have any connections at your company? I know someone who's looking for a job in tech. Totally brilliant, really hard worker. She's got like a lifestyle brand on Instagram. Could use something stable while she's growing it. I blinked. You mean you? She shrugged, all innocent. Who else? I looked at her for a beat. She hadn't worked a full-time job in over 3 years. Her last business venture was a pyramid scheme in all but name, and the one before that sold essential oils infused with moonlight. I remembered because she tried to get Mom to invest $5,000 in it. She did. Before I could answer, Uncle Mark laughed again. I mean, hey, if he can afford a Lambo, maybe he is in charge of hiring, right? Chloe jumped in, it's only fair. Family helps family. That part hit me sideways. Family helps family? Where was that phrase when I worked 60-hour weeks and couldn't afford groceries? When I had to skip Christmas 3 years ago because rent was due and Mom told me, priorities, sweetheart? Where was it when they threw a graduation party for Chloe, but never even showed up for mine? Sure, I said, calmly. Send over her resume. Chloe brightened instantly, already flipping open her phone. Great. It's more like a portfolio, but of course, I added, I'll have to send it through the proper review channels. There's a pretty strict process for interns, and there's no guarantee. Her face froze. Interns. Yeah, I said, sipping my water. We don't really hire junior roles without experience. A beat passed. Uncle Mark chuckled, clearly sensing the tension. Well, sounds like someone's feeling himself today. I ignored him. Instead, I turned to Mom. So, how's the new remodel going? She looked surprised, then softened. It's been good, actually. Expensive, but worth it. Of course, we had to dip into your father's pension just a bit. Things are tight these days. Dad muttered something about inflation. I nodded. That's rough. She glanced sideways. Which reminds me, your brother said you've been doing well lately. He mentioned something about stocks. Maybe you could, take a look at our portfolio sometime, just to see if we're positioned correctly. I swallowed the laugh rising in my throat. Not even subtle. She didn't ask how I was doing or what I'd been up to. Just pivoted right into what I could do for them. Maybe, I said. When I have time. She smiled politely, but I saw that flicker of irritation in her eyes, like a child told maybe later when asking for candy. As brunch continued, the tension shifted. They tried to steer the conversation back to safe ground, Chloe's new lifestyle rebrand, Uncle Mark's plans for some undervalued commercial property. But every so often, someone's gaze would drift to the driveway, where the Lamborghini sat gleaming like a black diamond, a ghost haunting them. At one point, Chloe got up to refill her drink, muttering as she passed me, "It's just a car, Ethan. Doesn't make you better than us." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But then came the moment that really set everything in motion. After the meal, we were all lingering on the patio. Uncle Mark was showing off his new fire pit, complete with a voice-controlled lighting system that barely worked. That's when he dropped it. One of those casual bombs, meant to sound offhand, but aimed like a knife. He clapped me on the back. So, now that you're rolling in cash, you finally going to grow up and move out of that shoebox? Get a place with a real kitchen, maybe. Heck, buy a place like this, if you're serious. Everyone laughed, even Mom. I shrugged. Already bought a place. That shut them up. You what? Dad said. I turned, took another sip of water, letting the silence breathe. Closed last week, I said, not bothering to hide the grin this time. Downtown penthouse. It's got a rooftop terrace and a private elevator. Chloe blinked. You're kidding. Nope. Wait, Mom said slowly. How much was it? A little under $6 million. Dead silence. Uncle Mark recovered first. Wow. Big spender. Hope you don't blow it all in one place. Already diversified, I said. This was just the part one felt like living in. I could feel it. The shift. The tone had changed. They weren't mocking me anymore. They were calculating, trying to figure out how to reframe things, how to place themselves closer to the new power center without looking desperate. I saw it first in Mom's eyes, that flicker of something greedy, entitled, like the wheels had started turning. That was the moment I knew. They didn't just want validation anymore. They wanted access. And they were going to start asking for it, one favor at a time. What they didn't know, what they never expected, was that I already knew exactly how this game worked. And I had no intention of letting them win. Not this time. But that part comes later. For now, I just stood there in the patio's filtered light, letting them process everything they thought they knew about me, unraveling in real time, because the real story was only just beginning. The brunch ended awkwardly, with stiff hugs and overly sweet goodbyes. Chloe tried to mask her bitterness by complimenting my shirt. Is that Zara or, some minimalist thing? And Mom gave me that long, lingering look she always did when she was about to ask for something. But for once, I didn't offer anything. I just nodded, thanked them for the meal, and walked back to my car without a backward glance. The next few weeks were quiet. Suspiciously quiet. No texts from Chloe with passive-aggressive links to job listings. No voicemails from Dad asking if I'd considered investing in modular prefab homes. Even Mom, who usually sent a dozen emojis and random articles about smart habits of successful men, had gone silent. At first, I thought, maybe they're giving me space. Maybe, finally, some respect had settled in. Maybe the Lamborghini, the penthouse, the quiet success had bought me something I'd never had in that family, dignity. I should have known better. It started with a phone call. I was at the new place, barefoot on the rooftop terrace, sipping coffee, watching the Chicago skyline turn orange as the sun dipped. My phone buzzed. Mom, I hesitated, then answered. Hey, hi, sweetheart, she said, too brightly. How's the new home? I keep picturing you up there like Bruce Wayne, all handsome and mysterious. I chuckled. It's great. Still settling in. A beat of silence. Then listen, your Uncle Mark mentioned something about a housewarming. I paused. I hadn't planned one. Oh. Her voice dropped slightly. Well, we'd love to see the place. It's been so long since we've done anything as a family. I think it'd be really good for Chloe, you know. She's been going through a rough patch. I didn't ask what kind of rough patch. I didn't need to. Chloe's rough patches were code for running out of credit. I'll think about it, I said, keeping my tone neutral. She didn't like that, but she didn't push. Not then. 2 days later, I came home to find a delivery van outside my building. Workers were hauling catering trays, crates of champagne, floral arrangements, even folding chairs. I blinked in confusion, then went straight to the lobby. There, standing with our concierge, flashing her too bright smile, was Chloe. "Ethan," she chirped, like we were old friends. Perfect timing. I was just making sure everything's in place for Saturday. My stomach dropped. For what? She blinked innocently. The housewarming. Didn't Mom tell you? We've got the guest list down to 64. Nothing crazy, just family, friends, a few influencers. Oh, and there's a violinist. I stared at her. You planned a party at my home? Well, our home for the day, she waved a manicured hand. We wanted to surprise you. I never agreed to this. Oh, please, she scoffed. You've got the space. You're not using it for anything anyway. Don't be selfish. I felt something twist in my chest. Who gave you permission to even enter my building? Mom did, she smiled sweetly. She said you'd be too humble to plan something like this for yourself, so she helped me coordinate. She said to use the building's event request form. I turned to the concierge. Did someone submit a form under my name? He looked uncomfortable. Yes, sir. It was emailed with your signature. I assumed it was approved. I narrowed my eyes. Can you show me? He hesitated, then pulled it up on the screen. There it was. My name, my address, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was forged. The email was from a Gmail address I hadn't used in years. A throwaway account I'd signed up for in college, long before I got serious about privacy and security. And then I remembered Mom had access to that account years ago, when I was between jobs and she'd helped me apply for things. She insisted on keeping the login. I'd forgotten all about it. I turned back to Chloe. You forged my approval. You're hosting a party I didn't agree to at my home, with over 60 people I don't know. Oh my God, she laughed. Stop being dramatic. It's just one day. You're not even using the space. Get out. Her smile faltered. Excuse me. Get out of my building. Right now, Chloe. I'm not asking twice. Her jaw clenched. She glanced at the concierge, then back at me. Fine, she spat. But you're seriously going to regret being this petty. Mom said you'd act like this. That night, I canceled every vendor, blocked the access passes, sent a note to building security to deny entry to my family for the foreseeable future. I was angry, but more than that, I was hurt. They didn't ask. They never asked. They just took, like they always had. And this time, they'd crossed a line. The betrayal stung deeper than I expected. It wasn't just the forged form or the party I never approved. It was the crushing realization that, even now, after everything, I was still just a resource to them. A wallet. A venue. A status symbol. Not a person. A week passed. No one called. No one apologized. Then came the second punch. I got an alert from my bank, a flagged transaction. $19,700. A pending wire transfer to a private account under the name Chloe. I nearly dropped my phone. It had been initiated through my business account, one no one in my family even knew existed. An account I'd protected with two-factor authentication, internal access only, or so I thought. I spent the next hour on the phone, locking everything down, running security checks, tracing access logs. The breach? It came through a shared Wi-Fi network at my mother's house. The last time I'd visited, I'd logged into my business email briefly to forward myself a contract. Apparently, someone, Chloe, almost certainly, had copied my credentials from the router cache using some shady app. I stared at the flagged transaction for a long time. It wasn't just betrayal now. It was theft. calculated, cold, entitled. And I knew, without a doubt, they weren't going to stop until I made them. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. The anger didn't just boil, it hardened into resolve. They wanted to play games? Fine. I knew how to play too. But this time, I wouldn't just protect what was mine. This time, I was going to make sure they could never do this to anyone else again. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching the Chicago skyline glow through floor-to-ceiling windows, my mind spinning. I had the money, the title, the view, but none of it could drown out the familiar ache in my chest. That knot of betrayal. That weight of knowing, deep in your gut, that the people who raised you never really saw you. They saw what you could give them. And now that I had something worth taking, they'd sunk their claws in again, only deeper. I kept replaying it all, the forged signature, the unauthorized party, the attempted wire transfer. Chloe laughing it off, calling me selfish. Mom saying I'd overreacted when I finally called her. That call was short. Did you really think forging my approval for a party in my home was okay? I'd asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Mom sighed, like I was inconveniencing her. You're so sensitive, Ethan. It was meant to celebrate you. You've done well. We just wanted to share that with everyone. And the bank transfer? Was that celebrating me too? Silence. I waited. She finally said she needed help, Ethan. You have so much. Your sister's just trying to get back on her feet. I didn't even know she had my banking info. You logged in from our house? Don't blame us if you left doors open. She said that like it was my fault. Like I had invited them in to take what they wanted. Like I owed them for existing. I'm done, I said. With all of you. Oh, don't be dramatic. Families fight. No. Families don't steal from each other. You're going to regret cutting off your own blood, she snapped. You'll end up alone. Then she hung up. And I sat there, alone in a $6 million penthouse, with a Lamborghini downstairs and a closet full of tailored clothes I barely wore. Feeling like I was right back in that shoebox apartment, just older, lonelier, and now with a better view. I didn't go into the office for a few days. I told the team I was sick. Turned off Slack, ignored emails. The startup was stable now, post-acquisition. I'd built a team that didn't need me every hour. But I still felt guilty, like I was letting something crumble again. I barely had the energy to get out of bed. My apartment, once a symbol of how far I'd come, started to feel like a gilded prison. Every echoing step reminded me I had no one to share it with. No partner, no close friends nearby. I'd pushed so hard, for so long, to prove myself that I hadn't built much of a life outside of work. I ordered food but barely touched it. Let dishes pile up. My houseplants withered. I didn't answer when the doorman buzzed. Ghosted my team lead when she asked if I needed support. One night, I sat at my desk staring at the wire transfer screen. $19,700. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the audacity, the certainty with which Chloe believed she could reach into my life and take what she wanted, like it was hers by birthright. And Mom defending it. Justifying it. That hit harder than I admitted. I kept flashing back to when I was 14 and Chloe had taken my college savings bond, something our grandfather left only for me, and used it to buy herself a trip to Europe. Mom had covered for her then, too. She needed it more, she'd said. You'll find another way. And I had. Every time they took something, I rebuilt. But I was so tired of rebuilding in silence. So, I started making lists. Not vengeful plans. Not yet. Just facts. Accounts I needed to audit, access points to lock down, legal options if needed, security upgrades for everything. Two-factor authentication, private server encryptions, biometric locks. I moved funds into cold storage, flagged accounts with suspicious login attempts, contacted a digital security consultant, and hired him for a full privacy sweep. Then I went a step further. I changed my will. I wrote it out carefully, detailing every contingency. If anything ever happened to me, not a single member of my family would see a dime. Not Mom, not Dad, and especially not Chloe. Instead, it would all go to a scholarship fund. One for kids like me, quiet, overlooked, the ones everyone dismissed because they didn't shine in the way their families wanted. I even named the fund after my grandfather, the one who tried to give me a start before it was stolen. Then I called a lawyer. A very good one. I told him everything. Not just the wire attempt, but the long history of financial gaslighting, the emotional manipulation, the forged email. He didn't say much, just nodded and started drafting papers. I didn't know what the endgame was yet, but I knew I had to walk away. Not just emotionally, but completely financially, legally, digitally. A clean break. I canceled the joint phone line I'd still been paying for in my parents' name. Cut off the automatic transfer that had funded their emergency savings for the last 5 years. Pulled out of the investment fund I'd let Dad manage for a family legacy. I let the broker know I was taking full control of the assets. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about finally choosing me. But even as I started to cut cords, part of me wondered if I was doing the right thing. Was I becoming cold, heartless? Would I wake up one day and regret it, just like Mom said? Then, a few days later, I got an alert. A private Facebook group, Family Reunion, hosted by Chloe and friends. I clicked out of curiosity. The banner was a photo of my car, taken without my knowledge, parked in front of my building. The caption, celebrating the success of our amazing little brother. Can't wait to toast him with friends and family next month. RSVP soon. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Not only were they still planning to use me, they were broadcasting it. Claiming me. Even now, after everything, they were still framing it like they owned my story. Like my success was just another party prop they could wave around to boost their own image. And suddenly, the question wasn't if I was going to walk away completely. It was how far I was willing to go to make sure they never had a chance to do this to me, or anyone else, ever again. That Facebook post changed everything. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, every word sinking into my chest like a stone. Celebrating our amazing little brother. The hypocrisy would have been laughable if it hadn't felt so personal. There it was, the final confirmation that to them, I wasn't a person. I was a narrative. A success story they wanted to wrap themselves around like a designer scarf, something they could wear at parties and smile about as if they'd built me. I closed the laptop without reacting. Didn't call, didn't comment, didn't even block them. They wanted to spin a story? Fine. I'd write the ending myself, but this time, they wouldn't be in it. That week, something inside me shifted. The pain, the hollow ache of betrayal, was still there, but it hardened into something sharper, more focused. I began waking up earlier. Worked out again, cleaned the apartment, filled the fridge. I reached out to my team, and to my surprise, they welcomed me back with open arms. Apparently, I'd earned more goodwill than I realized. When I showed up for our Monday meeting, the entire dev squad clapped. I laughed genuinely for the first time in weeks, taking my usual spot near the whiteboard. The startup that had once been a long shot was now growing rapidly. After the acquisition, the parent company offered me a key leadership role with a substantial equity stake. They wanted to spin out a sister company, a hybrid AI platform for high-level logistics, and they wanted me to lead it. Fully funded, minimal oversight, full control. I took the deal quietly, strategically. No announcement, no online posts. But I hired a team of brilliant engineers, found a sleek, private office space downtown, and got to work. This time, I wasn't building out of fear. I wasn't hustling just to prove I deserved a seat at the table. I was the table now. And it felt different. Cleaner. Calmer. I set new boundaries too. Fired my old accountant, he'd been referred by Dad years ago, and hired a rock-solid financial advisor who built portfolios for C-level execs. I moved all my assets into secure trusts, closed all shared accounts, and created a new holding company to manage my investments completely under my name. And I started saying no. No to my parents' urgent requests for financial help when their roof leaked. No to Chloe when she sent a breezy text about wanting to catch up over lunch, which somehow included the address of a $200 a plate sushi bar. No to Uncle Mark when he emailed about a hot investment opportunity. Just no. And I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I just went silent. Their confusion was immediate. Then came the guilt trips, the passive-aggressive group texts, the long voicemails from Mom asking if I was okay, wondering why I'd changed. I had changed. I wasn't that quiet, desperate to please kid anymore. I wasn't someone they could mold into a family ATM. I was mine. That summer, I bought a small cabin 3 hours outside Chicago. Not flashy, not expensive, just quiet, surrounded by trees and stars. I kept it to myself. No one in my family even knew it existed. I'd go there on weekends, bring a book, cook simple meals, and listen to music. I hadn't realized how much noise I'd grown used to. The expectations, the judgment, the constant tug of wanting approval. Out there, it was just me. Me and peace. Back in Chicago, I started mentoring younger engineers. A few had stories like mine, brilliant minds who'd grown up. Overlooked, underappreciated, dismissed because they weren't loud or charismatic. I helped one guy polish his resume and get into Google. I connected another with a seed fund I'd invested in and watched her raise $300,000 in less than a week. Their wins felt more real than any car, any suit, any number in my account. Meanwhile, my new company was gaining traction fast. By fall, we landed 3 major enterprise clients and a $1.5 million pre-order for the beta. Investors came calling. The parent company upped my equity stake. My name started floating around in quiet VC circles. Still, I stayed off social media. I didn't want the spotlight. I didn't need it. But others noticed anyway. One afternoon in September, I walked into a private conference for startup founders and immediately felt a dozen eyes on me. A woman from a major tech journal introduced herself and asked if I'd be open to a profile. I hesitated, but eventually said yes. On one condition, she couldn't publish anything about my family. She asked why. Because they're not part of the story, I said. And it was true. They'd always treated my ambition like an inconvenience until it started printing money. Then suddenly, I was theirs. Their prodigy, their pride. But they never helped build any of it. They didn't support me when I was working 2 jobs and eating instant noodles. They didn't show up for my graduation. They weren't there when I needed advice or encouragement. They only showed up when they saw dollar signs. So now, they were out. And without my support, they were struggling. I heard from an old high school friend that Chloe had posted a GoFundMe for a business recovery fund. Something about a broken camera and unjustified platform censorship. The only donation was from Mom. Dad called twice. Both missed calls. No voicemails. I ignored them. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was power. And for the first time in my life, I had it. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't flailing. I wasn't hustling for anyone else's approval. I was building on my terms. And I knew sooner or later, they'd try to come back. They'd find some new excuse, a new crisis, a new manipulation. But next time, I'd be ready. Because I had something they never did, not just money, not just success, but clarity and a plan. It happened on a random Thursday afternoon. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just a soft ping on my work phone while I was reviewing our third-quarter roadmap with the product team. Subject: Notice of Inquiry. Rivera Holdings, LLC. I nearly dismissed it. My name wasn't Rivera Holdings. But the sender, someone from a mid-tier legal firm in Delaware, had attached documents. And there, plain as day, was my name. Apparently, my parents had formed an LLC a few months ago, and somehow, I was listed as a co-founding contributor. The documents claimed I had transferred assets to the LLC and orally committed future financial backing to ensure its operations. That wording sent a chill through my chest. It was vague, legally clumsy, and just plausible enough to cause problems if I didn't shut it down fast. I immediately looped in my lawyer. He read through the documents, then muttered, "They're phishing. This isn't a real claim. It's a setup." "For what?" I asked. "To pressure you, or to make you look like you're part of something you never agreed to." "My guess? They're leveraging your name for legitimacy." He was right. I did some quiet digging. And what I found made my stomach turn. Rivera Holdings LLC had launched a luxury lifestyle brand, complete with a cheap Shopify site, Instagram ads featuring my parents' backyard dressed up to look like a spa, and an About Us page claiming the business was built from generational wisdom and cutting-edge tech, courtesy of their son's industry experience. My face wasn't on the page, but my story was almost word for word stolen from a private podcast interview I'd done months earlier, the one I'd asked not to be made public. The worst part? They had already received small business funding from a lender who trusted their story because of me. My blood boiled. They were using me again. Not just socially, not just to impress relatives or flaunt at brunch, but financially, legally, fraudulently. And I realized something in that moment. They were never going to stop. Not unless I made them. But I wasn't going to confront them. No angry phone calls. No shouting matches. No text messages begging them to explain. This time, I would take a different path. One they wouldn't see coming. One they couldn't wiggle out of. I met with my lawyer again, and we began quietly building a case. Not for court, but for control. The kind of control that would give me the leverage to make this end on my terms. It started with documentation. I compiled years' worth of emails, texts, voice messages, anything that demonstrated how my family had benefited from my finances without contracts or consent. We found the forged event form from the housewarming. We gathered bank records showing unauthorized transfers. I pulled the archived Facebook group post where they used my likeness to promote a celebration that never happened. And of course, I screen captured the entire Rivera Holdings site. My lawyer contacted the small business lender they had tricked. We presented enough evidence to trigger an internal fraud audit. Their loan was flagged. Frozen. Then I took things a step further. I hired a private investigator. Not for dirt, nothing shady, just facts. Because I had a hunch. This wasn't the first time they played this game. And I was right. In the last 5 years, my parents had funneled money through no fewer than 4 shell companies. None of them lasted more than 18 months. They had used different names, different friends as silent co-signers, even an old landlord as a stand-in manager. And each time the company tanked, they'd moved on like nothing happened. The worst part? One of the companies had scammed a family friend out of $50,000. Someone who believed my father when he said it was a guaranteed short-term investment backed by my tech success. That family friend, Mr. Sanchez, my high school chemistry teacher. The same man who once gave me a ride home every day for a year when my parents forgot to pick me up. I called him. He answered on the second ring. His voice cracked when he heard my name. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't know what they did, but I'm going to make it right." "You don't have to," he said. "I want to." I wired him the $50,000 the next day. No fanfare, no public show. Just a promise quietly kept. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the shift. I wasn't just healing myself anymore. I was undoing their damage, cleaning up their mess. And with every step, I got stronger. I partnered with a legal team specializing in white-collar fraud. We drafted cease and desist letters, filed formal complaints with the Federal Trade Commission and Better Business Bureau, and prepared civil claims for identity misuse and fraud, just in case. I still wasn't sure I'd go that far, but I wanted the gun loaded if I needed to pull the trigger. Then I moved on to the quiet part of the plan, reputation. I contacted a branding firm. Not for clout, but for protection. They helped me build a verified public-facing profile. Not flashy, just enough digital presence to separate my identity from anything my family tried to link me to. We optimized SEO, established a simple personal site, secured trademark protections on my name in association with my businesses, and created a paper trail of public disassociation from Rivera Holdings and anything affiliated. Then I bought the domain riverholdings.org, redirected it to a static page that read, "This company is not affiliated with Ethan and any of his business ventures. All unauthorized use of his name and likeness is being handled through legal channels." I didn't tell them I was doing any of this. I didn't need to, because by the time they found out, it would be too late. Then came the final piece. One of the founders I mentored, Sarah, had started a nonprofit offering mentorship and startup grants to underrepresented youth in tech. She was growing fast, but struggling with consistent funding. I reached out to her one night and offered to become her first anchor investor. "Are you sure?" she asked, stunned. I don't even know how to thank you." "Don't," I said. "Just do the work. Build something that lasts. I donated anonymously, but stayed involved quietly. She didn't know it, but I was setting up a permanent trust that would funnel 10% of my annual profits directly to her nonprofit for the next decade. It was my answer to the question that had haunted me since the betrayal. What do I do with all of this? The answer? I give it to people who deserve it, not people who demand it. That fall, I received a final email from Mom. Subject line, "We need to talk. Please." The message was short. "I know you're angry, but this isn't how families treat each other. I'm sorry if you feel we crossed the line. We just wanted to be part of your success. Please don't do anything that would hurt your sister or the business. You've come so far. Let's not burn bridges." There it was. Still the same spin. If you feel we crossed a line. Still protecting Chloe. Still defending a business built on lies. Still trying to guilt me into silence. But now, I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was ready. The next chapter was coming. And this time, they wouldn't be the ones writing it. It was December when the house of cards finally started to fall. Not with a bang, but with a knock. Chloe opened the door to her rented townhouse in the outskirts of Phoenix and found a man in a gray suit holding a small envelope. He handed it over with a polite nod. "Ms. Rivera, you've been served." It wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. It was a formal notice of disassociation, a legally binding declaration stating that I, Ethan, had never been involved in Rivera Holdings LLC, nor had I authorized the use of my name, likeness, or reputation in connection with any of their activities. It outlined, in detail, every instance of unauthorized use I had documented. And it gave them 14 days to remove every reference, retract every statement, and dissolve any promotional materials containing my name. If they failed, then the real consequences would follow. I made sure copies were sent to Mom, Dad, their accountant, who, it turned out, had no idea he was part of a scam, and, this part was delicious, their loan officer at the small business bank that had approved their funding. The first domino fell 3 days later. The lender revoked the $45,000 loan and began an internal fraud investigation. Their accounts were frozen. Their Shopify storefront was removed for identity abuse. Instagram flagged their brand as under review, and within 48 hours, their entire social media presence vanished. But the real moment I'd been waiting for came from a familiar voice, Mr. Sanchez. He filed a small claims lawsuit against Rivera Holdings for the full $50,000 he was misled into investing. I'd told him I'd stay out of it, but his son was a lawyer and, apparently, he wanted to make a point. The lawsuit was small, but it opened the door. Because once it became public record, others started stepping forward. One by one, former friends, coworkers, neighbors, all people my parents or Chloe had quietly borrowed from, pitched to, or taken advantage of, started sharing stories. One woman claimed my mom had promised to include her as a co-founder in a beauty line that never existed. Another man said Chloe convinced him to sponsor her wellness retreat in exchange for brand placement, only for the retreat to be canceled and his money to disappear. It wasn't just a few lies. It was a pattern. And now that pattern had receipts. I'd quietly worked with my legal team to compile a full report, a timeline complete with evidence, screenshots, and transaction records of everything my family had done over the last 10 years in my name or connected to my success. We titled it, "The Legacy They Tried to Steal." I never released it publicly. I didn't need to. But I did send a copy anonymously to every vendor, bank, and potential partner they'd listed as references on Rivera Holdings. The calls stopped, the doors closed, and the whispers started. Even Uncle Mark, who once boasted about flipping condos and leveraging connections, sent me a shaky LinkedIn message asking if I wanted to grab lunch and talk things out. I didn't respond. But the final straw, the moment I knew the revenge had landed exactly where it needed to, came at 6:41 a.m. on Christmas Eve. I was at the cabin, fireplace crackling, coffee in hand, when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months. Mom. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me, and I played it. Her voice was brittle. Cold. "Ethan, I hope you're proud of yourself. Your sister had to move out. The business is gone. We're being audited. Everything we built is unraveling because you had to punish us over what? A misunderstanding? A party? You could have handled this quietly, like family. But you chose this. There was a pause. I hope someday you understand the damage you've done. We're your blood. I played the message twice. Not because I was shaken, but because it confirmed everything I'd ever known about them. They hadn't learned anything. They still believed they were the victims. Even now, after they stole, lied, manipulated, they thought I was the one who owed them. And that's why I never regretted any of it. Because this wasn't revenge born from hate. It was justice born from truth. I didn't destroy them. They did that on their own. All I did was remove the safety net they'd used to bounce back every time. The one I used to be. Now, they'd fall like everyone else. And me? I finally stood tall. Not in spite of them, but without them. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was slow, humiliating, and public in the ways that mattered most to them. The LLC dissolved within weeks. The fraud investigation led to a full IRS audit. Turns out my parents had been mixing personal and business funds for years, writing off extravagant purchases, spa weekends, luxury handbags, first-class flights as consulting expenses. The back taxes alone crippled them. Their accountant, terrified of liability, cut ties immediately and reported potential misconduct to the state board. Their credit tanked. Chloe moved back in with them. Her influencer life quietly died. No more beach selfies. No more curated brunches. Her sponsorships pulled out when word spread that she'd used a fake endorsement from me in her brand pitch deck. The laptop she once used to edit motivational content was sold on Facebook Marketplace for $200. I never spoke to any of them again. They sent messages for months, ranging from furious and accusatory to pathetically apologetic. I read none of them. I had my assistant filter every call, every email, every attempt. Eventually, even those stopped. The rest of the world moved on, and so did I. The new company grew beyond anything I imagined. In the spring, we secured a partnership with a global logistics firm. Our valuation tripled. Investors called me a visionary, a quiet force in the tech space. I just smiled and kept working. The scholarship fund I started in my grandfather's name launched its first cohort. I flew out to meet the students personally, young kids with fire in their eyes, most of whom had no idea what they were capable of yet. I saw myself in them. And for once, I felt like the success I'd built meant something more than just escaping my past. I never posted about my wins, never clapped back online, never exposed them publicly, because I didn't need to. Their downfall spoke louder than any tweet ever could. Years later, a journalist reached out about doing a feature on self-made founders who rose from difficult families. I declined, but I gave her one quote: "Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's living so far above their world they can't even reach your shadow." And I meant it. That December, I spent Christmas alone in my mountain cabin. No drama, no guilt. Just snow, silence, and a roaring fire. I poured a glass of wine, raised it to the night, and whispered to peace. But thinking back to that Christmas Eve voicemail, hearing her voice, still so convinced she was the victim, it makes me wonder. What would you have done?